On a Sunday, what is your priority? Is it CAT preparation or is it going to the beach?
How do we plan our journey to CAT 24?
So for verbal, there's no magic pill.
Obviously, there are some areas which you can prepare in DILR and go for the test.
The core preparation aspect don't change.
So if I have a choice of either reading a book or solving,
So I'm not even saying that you start reading philosophy, art and literature.
a lot of students literally fear math.
A student should know the basics of all the topics.
So what's the change in the strategy or preparation plan for a repeater?
Second time, the focus has to be more on testing.
How should they prepare based on what they saw in Quant and CAT 23?
Don't be scared of it, right? Because see, if it has happened in one particular, does not mean that it will continue to happen, right?
Because come on, you need to have a life.
On one hand, we've said that, don't take your score too hard, but I think everybody also focuses on the percentile.
Well, I do want to get deeply philosophical about this duality.
Hi, with about 150 odd days left to CAT, we have a lot of students asking the same questions to us. How do we plan our journey to CAT 24? And what better than having three experts discuss the strategies and the study plan for the upcoming few months of your preparation. So I am going to take you through all the tips and strategies required to help you crack CAT 24. We are going to talk for each section, the prep plan required and the mental aptitude or preparation required so that you do your best on the CAT day. So we'll start off with verbal. And Kumud ma'am, the first question that we always have from the students is, these days students tend not to read a lot, and hence when they are faced with difficult RCs on the CAT day, they find it very difficult to comprehend the passages. So I think when we had asked these questions to the students, the most common complaint was, when we read the second paragraph, I actually forget what happened in the first paragraph, So most students are suffering from actually a short-term memory loss. So what is your method to help tackle this issue? So I'll just repeat the issue. When they reach the second paragraph, they forget what happened in the first paragraph and so on.
I find this situation slightly strange because it's like saying that I'm watching a movie, but by the time I reach the interval, I've forgotten what happened before the interval. So usually it happens because we are so bored reading the passage that we don't absorb that information. So our eyes are moving over the text, but it's not really going into our brains. And I think the best way to overcome this inertia would probably be to expose yourself to more and more text. So for verbal, there's no magic pill. There is nothing that I can tell you that will help you all of a sudden comprehend a passage. That's not going to happen. Now, how do you expose yourself to more and more text? There are two ways. For those who do not have too much time, we would say at least solve 1 to 2 passages every day. I believe that can be done in half an hour. So I don't think that anyone can afford to say, I can't even spare half an hour for verbal, because then you're just making an excuse. Those of you who have nothing else to do, you are fully committed to your CAT prep, I would say, please pick up a book as well and also solve passages. And after a while, you will realize that your retention improves on its own. It's like learning any other skill.
Okay. So I'll just pick up from where you left. So if I have a choice of either reading a book or solving, let's say 2 RCs a day, what would, in your opinion, help me more?
If I had to pick one, I would say please solve passages, because it is easier. You also get a sense of accomplishment because you know that you've solved at least a few questions. But at the same time, I would always say that a combination is going to work best. First of all, because passages are boring, right? And CAT will not customize passages to your liking, no matter how much you want that to happen.
Okay.
Now, when you are allowed to pick up a book or an article, at least you can start reading something that you're remotely interested in. So I'm not even saying that you start reading philosophy, art and literature. I'm saying read a biography, autobiography, a book on sports, a book on travel. As long as it is written in English, it's good. So please try to do both. Now, if you are the sort who is motivated by famous people, most famous and successful people, regardless of their work schedule, are able to read 25 pages a day. Now, if they can do it and you aspire to be one of these famous people, then why not set that rule for yourself?
Okay. So 25 pages a day, and 2 RCs a day is what Kumud ma'am thinks will work best. An associated question, is there a list of books that you recommend? Is there a list we can post in the comment section where students know what book to read from a very CAT perspective, I would say?
Yeah, so I think it's always helpful to have a list to get started with. So you will find a reading list in the description. So just make sure that you look at it. But at the same time, don't limit yourself to this list, because ultimately you have to like what you are doing. So if I tell you that you need to start reading non-fiction and you're not really the sort who likes non-fiction, for example, I don't like non-fiction. So it's okay if you start off with a book of short stories. So in the description, in the reading list, you'll find that there are lighter reads, there are short story collections, there are novels, and there are heavy non-fiction books for very advanced readers, and there are lighter non-fiction books. Start with whatever you're comfortable with. Don't let anyone pressurize you into saying, this is what you do. Now here, I would definitely like to make a mention of Aeon, not in a good or a bad way, but just the fact that Aeon is a highly recommended reading source. And I believe that it has very good quality content. That's not a problem. But Aeon is not for everyone. So if I were a student now, I would probably not want to start off with Aeon. 10 years ago, where I was fairly clueless in life, perhaps, I would have said, okay, maybe I will try reading Aeon. But when I was in college and I was taking CAT myself, I would definitely not do that. Okay. I would probably just pick up a book, read the story, feel happy reading it. And that's what you should also do.
And again, a very common question, I'm sure this has come to you multiple times. Is there a number that, a student should have solved X number of passages, let's say before the CAT day?
Okay. Again, I wish that I could give you a guaranteed number, read or solve so many passages and you're guaranteed a 99.9. The fact of the matter is that this number is going to be different for everyone. So, for example, if in verbal currently you're at a 30 or a 40 percentile, that should be an indication that verbal needs work. So, I definitely need to take out time to solve at least 2 passages every day. Now, if you solve 2 passages every day for the next 150 days, then that is the number for you. And when I say solve 2 passages, this is apart from the proctored SimCATs that you're taking. So you cannot count that in that number.
Okay.
So
no double counting.
yeah. That's again the easy way out.
Okay.
But if someone is already at an 80 percentile, then maybe they don't have to do 2 passages every day. Maybe they can do 2 passages every alternate day. Or they could do 1 passage every day. So it really depends on where you are.
Maybe Prasad, I'll ask this question to you. It's related to verbal, but I'm sure as somebody who was or is actually very good at Quant, maybe if you can share your verbal prep strategy as a student so that they know how does a non-verbal expert handle verbal.
So I think a mistake that I did when I was a student was I never prepared a lot for VARC, right? Because when I started taking the test, what I realized that I was not doing well on the test. And I kept on pushing it. It was a very wrong strategy when I think back on my journey as an aspirant. So I used to love Quant, so I used to do more of Quant. I took it to a level where I ended up with a 99.9 on the actual CAT. But I ignored my VARC preparation a lot, right? And that is something I think every aspirant should be doing, which is do not ignore a particular section, and that is true for other sections also. You might be good at, say, Quant, then don't ignore VARC. You might be good at VARC, don't ignore Quant, right? So that is a mistake that I did as an aspirant. But of course, over the years, I realized what is it that is required to do well. One thing that I would suggest everybody to do is to read a lot, right? And that generally helps because, as Kumud also said, the more variety you read, you will be exposed to different ideas, thoughts, and then you also start having an opinion about everything, right? Whether it is philosophy or history or arts or whatever it is. You might have certain area of interest, but it is important to read outside that interest as well. So currently you might be interested in sports. So you read the sports section of the newspaper. But I would always go and figure out what is happening in the other walks of life and read more about that. Okay. So my suggestion is going to be read as much as possible and of course solve a lot of RCs. But beyond that also the reading that you do not only helps you follow the CAT but in your life in general, right? And I look at CAT preparation as a journey. It's not necessary that you're preparing only for a test. It kind of changes you as an individual, right? So that is the focus that I think every CAT aspirant can have.
Sure. Amit sir, to you, a lot of students again come back to us, and I'm sure they have come back to you also. That if they are not from an English background, maybe their schooling was not in English, right? The challenges are a little more severe, I would say.
Definitely.
So, any particular tips you would like to give them that this will help you reach the level of the comfort required to
So the
crack
first
the CAT?
thing which they'll have to do is they'll have to stop comparing themselves today with somebody else who's doing well at verbal. Means if you're going to tell yourself that, oh, I am far behind because I didn't do my schooling in English and I'm only at a 20% and I'll never make it, then you're never going to make it. You'll have to believe in yourself and you have to tell yourself, yes, I'll have to manage this section. I'm assuming that that child is good at the other areas and then wants to learn to manage verbal. Maybe if everybody else is looking at, say, a 99 point something in verbal, this person might say, okay, I'm happy with a 92, 93 in verbal. But I'll have to manage that, and you'll be very surprised that to get a 92, 93, you really don't need a huge score. The scores are pretty manageable. You can solve 2 RCs and a few way questions, keep your accuracy decently high, and you'll reach there. As far as preparation is going, obviously, what these people will have to do is anybody who's, say, weak at verbal, and I'm not even putting only those students who are, say, students who had were from a vernacular background or had not studied in English, their schooling, but even somebody who's done their schooling in English but is still weak in English or verbal, what they'll have to do is they'll have to actually put more effort. While what Prasad said actually happens vice versa. You are good at an area and you start doing more of that because obviously you're enjoying it. It is like then you're really not feeling the effort of it. But while when you do verbal, you'll have to feel you're feeling the effort, and hence people start neglecting it. Also, I've seen that verbal, and then later when I discuss LRDI, I have the same view that people think that, okay, if I've solved 100 RCs or 100 DILR, now solving 200 is not going to change anything, which I believe is wrong.
Okay.
In fact, maybe at 100, 150, things will not change. Me and Kumud have had this discussion on the inflection point earlier.
Okay.
So there will be one point where you will suddenly see the change in yourself. Maybe at 250 RCs, maybe at 350 RCs, whatever that number, it will be different for everybody. But at that one point, you will realize your accuracy is improved, and because of that, your scores have improved. And obviously, the whole idea is you start realizing the mistakes which you make in your mocks or whatever. Once you start learning from them, your scores will really improve, I think.
An associated question from what Amit sir just said, what is the suggested accuracy percentage when it comes to verbal? I'm not talking about today, I'm talking about what accuracy would you like a student to have on the day of the CAT?
Okay, definitely not 100%. So VARC, that's not going to happen regardless of how many RCs you do. I'm not saying it's impossible because nothing is impossible, but very unlikely. 90% also very likely to be difficult. I have seen some very, very good people get to a 90 percentile, but these are exceptions. So for VARC, let's understand that a lot of times you will not even know when you're going wrong. See, maybe in Quant, if you don't know how to start solving a question, you definitely know that you can't do that question. But in VARC, how are you supposed to know that? So for example, I have read the passage, I've understood the passage, I felt the passage was so simple. But then I go to the question and I'm stuck between 2 options. I'm sure this is a situation that everyone will face. Between those 2 options now, I can't eliminate either. So what do? I'm going to say, you know what, I've already spent about 6 minutes. Let me just pick an answer. And that is something you should not do.
Okay.
So for verbal, a lot of us play that field intuitively because we feel that we have practiced enough, so we have a sense of the right answer. For some people it works, for some people it does not work. For me, it does not work. I know that when I'm guessing and it is blind guessing, I will get that answer wrong. So please use your mock tests, your SimCATs to figure out whether guessing works for you. It can never be blind guessing, it has to be reasoned guessing. So first, select passages. If you don't understand the passage, regardless of how easy the questions are, you will not know the answer. Okay, so one of the things that students say is, should I pick an easy passage with difficult questions or a difficult passage with easy questions? You have to pick a passage that you can read and understand. So that is step 1. Step 2, when you go to the question and you genuinely don't know the answer, you don't have to do that question. Out of 4, do 3. If it's very difficult and you have no clue what is happening in the 2 questions there, do 2 also. That's acceptable. Ultimately, we are hoping for about 65 to 70% accuracy in RC. When we get to VA, because of the wonderful nature of parajumble, that accuracy falls a lot of times. So we do encourage you to solve the parajumbles. Do not dedicate your life to parajumbles because that may not really help. But we can live with about 50 to 60% accuracy there as well. So overall, if you're somewhere between 65 to 70 in verbal, you're pretty good.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Prasad, the one trend is, a lot of times people post videos on YouTube, some methods, read only the first line of each paragraph, read only certain lines from the first paragraph, and maybe read only one line from the question. And, somehow they tend to reach the answer. Do you think these stunts would actually work on the D-Day? Or would you ever recommend a serious aspirant to follow any of these stunts?
No, not really, because see, all of these are, as you said, right, stunts. So what happens is when you are reading something, as Kumud also mentioned, right, the idea is to understand what you're reading. If that is not happening, you're not going to get the right answers. So it may happen in some of the easier tests that are out there, right? So there are, if you look at say a CET or a CMAT,
Correct. Yeah.
or say a CUET, where a lot of times passages are such that you don't have to read the entire thing because there are no inference-based questions that are there.
Correct.
A lot of these questions are factual questions that, okay, what is the say opposite of a particular word which is highlighted, and for that you don't have to read the RC, you can just look at the highlighted word. But in CAT that is not going to happen. So all the questions are going to be based on your understanding of the passage, and hence it is important that you read the passage. Now, whether to read the questions first and then go to passage, or passage first and then go to questions, that is something that is an individual choice, I think. So a lot of people have tried that, where they read the questions first, so that it tells them what to look for while they are reading the RC.
Correct.
For me personally, it doesn't work. What I like to do instead is just read the entire RC, read the passage, and I try to read it as if I'm learning something new, so that I'm going to explain it to somebody in the next 5 minutes, how I would read this particular passage. So that is something that I try. Of course, people can try out different things in SimCATs, and that is the reason why SimCATs exist.
Correct.
That you try out different things, see what works for you, and then stick to what works for you.
Sure. So I'll just summarize what we have discussed. The golden mantra I think still remains. Read lot. So there should be width and depth. 25 pages a day is a very good suggestion by Kumud ma'am. And also obviously solving number of RCs. So 2 RCs per day seems to be the standard recommendation by almost all IMS mentors, which should take you to about 300 odd passages, not counting the proctored SimCATs. As far as accuracy is concerned, about 65 to 70% accuracy is good. And obviously, like Prasad mentioned in the end, we should look at, trying to apply these methods on the SimCATs. There are take-home SimCATs and the proctored SimCATs. And then maybe closer to the test, maybe by October, we have a strategy of what works for us and what does not work for us. So anything else you would like to add, Kumud ma'am, before we conclude the verbal section of our discussion now?
I just wanted to pick up on something that Prasad has said. In fact, I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it. Whenever we read something, read it as if you want to explain it to someone else. So I think that is the true test of comprehension, and comprehension is key. And I think that's what I'd like to close with.
Now, having discussed verbal, let's move on to the second section, which is DILR. I'll start with Amit sir now. So Amit sir, the first question that students typically have is, how do we actually prepare for DILR? There is no chapters, there is no starting point per se. So how do students actually start preparation for DILR?
So obviously there are some areas which you can prepare in DILR and go for the test. One being Venn diagram, one being two-numeric based set, one being, in fact, in the last 5 years, you're seeing a lot of numerical logic questions or sets based on that. So these are a couple of things you can prepare for. The rest is just keep building your logic, keep solving different kind of things, and that's what we told them in verbal, the similar thing I'm telling. If you're solving 2 sets every day, one logic, one DI, or sometimes numerical logic, doesn't matter. Very frankly, for me, whenever you're solving, try and select and solve. Just don't decide, okay, I'm going to solve this one set and then take half an hour for it. It's not going to help you. Take your 4 sets, a section test or whatever you want to take 4 sets, decide which are the best 2 to do first, because that selection will keep helping you. And hence I believe that keep practicing from here onwards, 2 sets every day, 350, 300, 350 sets from here till the day of the CAT, I think should do good. So since you asked me for a number, I would say from today, 350 sets besides the all SimCATs, proctored SimCATs. Yeah.
Great. So coming to you, Prasad sir, Amit sir mentioned about set selection. He mentioned how many sets per day that we can solve. Any other tips you'd like to add to the DLR preparation?
Yeah, so I think DLR is a mileage game, right? So if you look at any set of runners, right, when they're training for marathons, they will keep talking about the mileage, the weekly mileage that they're doing. So they will keep doing, let's say, maybe 5-miler or a 10-miler, and over the week, they will look at how many total miles I have covered while I'm running. So that is something that I would want every CAT aspirant to also do, that whether it is VRC or especially RC and DILR, it is going to be a mileage game, that let me do a lot of them. So as Kumud said, as Amit sir said, that this is the number that I'm looking at, let me push it as much as possible, right? That's one. The second aspect of that is going to be selection, because ultimately when you go for the test, it may happen that you will not be able to do the number that you are thinking of. So you might say that, okay, I'm thinking of doing 3 sets. You might be able to do only 2, right? Or you might be able to do only 1. What you need to focus on is, on that day, am I selecting the right sets? And that is an art that I have to get better at. So whether I'm doing, let's say, a topic from the courseware, or I'm taking a SimCAT, or I'm taking, let's say, a section test, right? Or a module test. Given these 4 sets in front of me, what is the best set that I should be doing at this point of time? Once that is done, of course, once the test is over, you spend time learning the things that you are not able to do. Right? So a lot of it is going to be learning from the experiences. See, not all of us got better at DILR from day one. Right? So when we started preparing, when I was a student again, there are some limited aspects that you are already familiar with. For example, let's say everybody must have traveled to some place, and you go to the station and you see a timetable, right? So you know that on this platform, this train is going to come. There are so many minutes remaining. I can create a DLR set out of that, right? A chess puzzle that all of us must have played when we were in school, that can be converted into a set. There are some aspects that all of us kind of know it is an acquired aptitude over a period of time. What we want to focus on is, in the remaining 6 months, roughly 6 months that we have, is how do I improve my aptitude further, right? So DLR is also an aptitude game ultimately. So how do I do a lot of sets that the CAT has started asking now, which Amit sir also mentioned, right? Numerical logic has become very, very common.
Can you explain what is numerical logic? Because a lot of non-IMS students may not really know this term.
Yeah, so it's a LR set which has numbers, right? So numerical logic, it is traditionally an LR puzzle. But then because it has numbers incorporated into it, it's sitting on the fence between whether it is a pure DI or a pure LR. So we started calling it numerical logic set, right? So a lot of those sets have started appearing. A lot of sets related to 4 set when. So earlier 2 set when was very common, 3 set when was very common. But now a lot of 4 sets when question have started appearing. And the students have to prepare for that. So you cannot say that I'm not going to do it and I'm a CAT aspirant or a serious CAT aspirant. As Amit sir also mentioned, there are a lot of topics that you can prepare for. So numerical logic, 4 set when. In addition to that, just a core percentage, ratio proportion, profit loss discount. If you know these topics, you'll be able to do well on a lot of DI caselets. So I have to master my arithmetic as well to be able to solve DI sets properly. And that is what I will focus on.
Can you refer to certain IMS specific resources that students can use to streamline their preparation instead of hunting where do I hunt for these 300 odd sets that Amit sir mentioned?
Yeah, so again, I think that is one of the things that I wanted to discuss in this video was people collect a lot of material, right? So there's a hobby that a lot of people have that, hey, do you have this material? Can you send it to me? But what are you going to do with that material? That is the question that you should be asking yourself, right?
So in fact, if I just watched that episode of Panchayat where the lead actor is actually taking books from Jitu and trying to solve books. So I think that still exists. Right?
Yeah. So the question that you should be asking is whether it really makes sense to me or not, right? Whether I really need that material. So going outside the IMS ecosystem to identify more sets, not really required, right? So within IMS ecosystem, firstly, we of course have at the topic level, we have created pre-class quiz and all of the concept videos and everything that is there, right, to support your understanding of that particular topic. And of course, you have the DLR sets. So speaking specifically about DLR, we have created a lot of DLR sets that students can practice in addition to the courseware that exists. Beyond that, of course, you have the proctored SimCATs, you have the take-home SimCATs, and alongside that, you have the past CAT papers. And past CAT papers is the best source, right? So you cannot say that I'm a serious aspirant and I have not solved the past CAT papers that exist in the public domain. So whether it is the past CAT papers from 2003 to 2008 and then 2016-17 onwards, which you have already given in the test format that students should be doing.
Fair enough. So Amit sir, one thing is, when students start taking the sectional test or even the actual sim test, etc., there are only 4 sets, and a lot of time it is very demotivating that at the end of 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I have not solved even a single set. Even though in theory I know that solving 1 or 2 sets is going to take me to a very nice percentile, but the mental impact of not having solved a single set after 15-20 minutes is very difficult to handle.
So the first thing we need to understand, Hemang, exactly what you said. If I solve 1 set, I clear the sectional cutoff. If I solve 2 sets, I'm at 95 percentile. Most of you all will be very, very happy with 95 percentile in DILR. So let's keep it there. Keep your target short first. First, let's get that 1 set. Now, my job is to first identify the easiest set. It is okay if it takes you 10, 12 minutes to skim through your 4 sets and decide which is the easiest set. Prasad said one term, the art of selection. I just want to differ a little bit. I think it is going to be more of a science of selection, not the art. So, selection of DILR has a science to it. If you follow the science, so if you see Tony's video, which is there on our IMS channel, which talks about how to select DILR sets, we've actually converted it to a science. We've actually started giving it points. And you realize that, okay, if a set has, out of 10, it has 8 points, based on whether the conditions are open, not open, whatever, the different conditions are there. We will talk about that. So we will obviously discuss that a lot in SimCAT suffer also. So we've been talking about that SimCAT suffer. We'll talk about it later also. So my point is, once you start selecting your sets well, I think most of you all will be able to comfortably solve 2 sets. Sure. But the whole problem is people keep jumping sets. They get so nervous that they start solving for 10 minutes. They jump to another one. And then after, as you said, after 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or I hope not 30 minutes, but say after 20 minutes, they realize that they're not reached anywhere, and then panic sets in.
There was actually a question I had here to both the experts on my either side. Is there a difference between solving a set on paper versus solving it online? Does it make a difference to your practice or accuracy?
So I think when it was paper pencil, it was definitely much easier, right? So now it has become more challenging for students. So there is slight difference between solving something on paper because you are also able to see all the questions at once and you're able to see the set, the information that is there. And while solving online, what happens is, because there's a lot of what you're doing is you're looking at the screen and then you're looking down, you're looking at the screen, you're looking down. So it is going to be a challenge, but again, I think same is true for even RCs.
Yes.
When it was paper pencil, I think it was definitely much easier, right? Because you could, let's say, underline things, you could circle out things, etc. So there is a difference, but I think that is these are the rules of the game, and we have to play with that. So yeah, I think that's what I'll say about it.
I think the best way to handle that is to practice it in an online mode. So practice in the mode which is going to actually appear on the day of the test. So instead of practicing on paper pencil and then struggling, how do I do it online mode? Best to do all your DILR practice, or at least most of it, in the on your computer or your laptop, etc.
So within that selection game, and so what you said, whether it's paper pencil, or I think what has also happened with CAT over last 7-8 years is the DILR section has evolved the most. In terms of changes, if you look at what, say, DILR was in from 2009 to 16 versus what is from 16 to 24, DILR has evolved the most. The difficulty level has definitely gone up. So I normally have this one simple strategy out of the 4 sets, which is my easiest one and which is my most difficult one. So one I definitely want to do and one I definitely don't want to look at.
Makes sense. Great. So I would say for DILR, from what I hear from all of them, one is, again, like RC, it has to be 2 or 3 sets a day. Prasad used the term mileage, so how many sets I've solved in a week. So that's a good parameter to follow. Amit sir has mentioned, even Prasad agreed that, how do you select your sets is going to play a very, very important role, because a wrong set can cost you 7 to 10 minutes, which might end up to be very, very costly. And finally, I would say that in DILR, it's so much about pattern recognition. So when Amit sir says, solve 300 sets, the idea is, suppose, and he also mentioned a 4-set Venn diagram. So the idea is, if I've solved, let's say 10, 20 sets on 4 sets Venn diagram, I know that, okay, this set I'm now tackling is very similar to a set that I have done, let's say on SimCAT 70. Maybe I have to minimize, maybe I have to maximize, maybe some number. It is very something similar to what I've done in the past, and hence I'm able to do it better. So both, I would say, for DILR and to some extent, I would say to RC it helps, but specifically it helps a lot in DILR. So pattern recognition machine is what you have to become, and that will really help you on the day of the CAT. I would say the best thing that happens to you is that you see 4 sets and you say, okay, all these 4 sets seem familiar. I've solved 300 sets in the past. I've done 100 past CAT sets, and now I'm set. I can select 2 or 3 sets that Amit sir mentioned. That will help me reach that 95-99 percentile mark, etc. So any parting words for DILR, Prasad, Amit sir, etc.?
I think, as Amit sir said, right, DILR, I think, is the area that has evolved the most, right? And when you look at, let's say, the 2016-17 CAT, the difference was that you had more element of choice, right? So you firstly have 1 hour to do DILR at that point of time, but you also had 8 sets to choose from. So you had element of choice. Now what has happened is that the element of choice has gone down and the time also has gone down, which means that you don't have a lot of comeback opportunities. So the reason why you have to improve your science and you have to follow that science and get better at selection is so that you have, once you look at a set, you are able to decide, am I doing it today or am I not doing it? And once you do that, I think then you are going to have a good score in DILR.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the quant section. So let's start our quant discussion. So Amit sir, starting with you. So for quant, a lot of students literally fear math. So my first question to you, that again is a very frequently asked question. There are, obviously, we divide at IMS quant into 5 modules. So what should be the order in which the student should prepare these modules?
So very frankly, if I just don't look at CAT 23, if I just keep CAT 23 aside, by far arithmetic was the most important module.
Okay.
CAT 23 made algebra also equally important now, maybe, and the questions were also difficult in algebra. But I would still put my neck down and say that arithmetic will be the first module everybody has to do. Now, but when I say arithmetic, I just don't mean only percentage, profit and loss, simple interest, compound interest. I also mean time and work and time, speed, distance. So if you look at majorly when the questions in the test appear, they come from these topics. There's a decent amount of time and work. There are a couple of questions on time, speed, distance always. So arithmetic will be your first module by far.
Okay. And how do you then do the others?
Looking at CAT now, definitely algebra, then geometry. Geometry numbers can go depending on your strength. A lot of students don't like geometry. Geometry was my favorite area. That is why I prefer geometry first, but that's okay. If you like numbers more than geometry, numbers. And then last would be modern maths, because I feel that especially topics like permutation, combinations and all, when the questions will get very difficult, the difference between an answer of 3,000 or 6,000, only the experts are going to realize. Why there is an extra 2 or a 1, 2 less in the multiplication of 2, only the experts will realize. And students will tend to make these errors. So it is okay to avoid those B and C level questions from such topics.
Okay.
But Hemang, one thing is very clear. A student should know the basics of all the topics. If you just go to say that, okay, I'm going to skip permutation, combination completely, and then you don't see it in the CAT and you feel happy, but you forget that you might see it in the DILR section. So it's not only for the quant section you're preparing PNC, but you also need it maybe in the DILR section. So prepare for all areas, at least the basic level questions, and then depending on your strength, you can go to B level questions in some topics and then C only in a very few topics.
So in fact, I was about to ask you that question, that can students skip certain topics, but you have already answered that. As of now, we should not be.
So as of now, and also because as we had discussed last time, also there are nearly 6 months. If you start thinking of skipping today, then you're already kind of giving up. You're in the give up mode. It is okay as you keep preparing and say 2 months before CAT, you realize that, okay, and with proof. So I'll give you, in fact, my story. When I started teaching for CAT, I thought I would be very good at permutation combination. I taught that for many years earlier.
Okay.
And then I realized, no, actually, I was not so good at it. And then you realize why, when you realize that when you look at your test scores and you see that area you're not doing well, that is the time you have to tell yourself, yes, I'm not doing well at it. So you can have a false feeling of fallacy and say that I'm actually good at this area, but the scores don't prove it, then you're not good.
Makes sense. If you can tell us, let's take one typical chapter, let's take percentage or profit and loss. So how should a student exactly prepare for that particular chapter? Can you give them steps? Can you refer to certain IMS resources that they can use?
So, okay, I'll start with the IMS resources. Say if I look at a chapter like percentage, let's take example, that's normally the first chapter everybody's preparing for, or numbers or whatever. For every chapter, we have approximately 5 concept videos. Now that's an average number. Some of them will have 3, some of them will have 7 also. So average, we have 5 concept videos, with a viewing time of each concept video being around 4 to 5 minutes on an average, or maybe slightly more. So you have roughly 45 minutes to 1 hour of concept videos. Now, when you're seeing the concept video, now this is what I had done with a couple of students. When you're seeing the concept video, if you just see it, it's not going to help. I would rather say that look at the concept video, look at what the concept is saying, try and solve that concept with a small example at that moment. There are examples also in the concept video. So when the example starts, just pause the video, try the example, and make a book or note for yourself and say, okay, now this is my 45 minutes of viewing. Maybe I took 2 hours because I wanted to solve a little bit also. So 2 hours of concept video. With that, there is also the small practice quiz is there, which is very basic question, which kind of just tells you that were you actually paying attention to the concept videos. So in fact, because it is viewing, sometimes we just zone out. We just like seeing and then we don't recollect a lot of things. So that is why we've added the quiz. I think that really helps there. So the quiz will be there. Post that, I would definitely go to the class exercise. Yes, so that is all. So Prasad, last time I think Prasad spoke about a very important thing, that what do you do before you go to class? Whether you go to class in an offline format or an online format, how much is your preparation before you go to class? If my logic is, if you decide for every chapter that I'm going to prepare for 1.5 hours before going to class, your learning will become, I think, 3 to 4x. And this, you can take my word for it. Means I am pretty experienced with Quant for last so many years. So I'm telling you, if you spend that 1 hour before class, your learning will be 3 to 4x in class. You will be able to ask very intelligent questions in class to your professor. And these things will help you. So I would then go to the practice exercise, the basic practice exercise we have. Definitely the class exercise will be solved in class, whether you will be in an offline format or an online format. In class, you will solve the class exercise. Post that, the second practice exercise and the benchmarking test. I think if you go ahead with this format, you will really do well. Do that for every chapter. Okay, as we said that, there are some chapters if you're already feeling a little bit less confident about, you can leave the benchmarking test for a little bit later. You can come back to it and so on.
Fair. I would just put this for a particular part or the section of our audience. So what you spoke obviously works well for somebody who is taking CAT for the first time. Now, would you recommend any change of both in Quant, DILR, and also I would say VARC that the student should make if he's taking CAT for the second or the third time? So what's the change in the strategy or preparation plan for a repeater, etc.? Prasad, would you want to take that?
Yeah, so see, when you're preparing for the very first time, right, you don't know a lot of things. So the initial time that you're spending is in learning the concepts. When you're taking CAT for the second time, and let's say I'm assuming that you've prepared well for the first time and all of that, maybe something didn't go right in the first attempt or whatever. Second time, the focus has to be more on test taking, right, and figuring out what was the gap in my preparation in the first attempt. So let's say, for example, the way it happened in my case, right, I realized that I hadn't put in a lot of effort on the VARC section in my first attempt, and that is something that I worked on for my second attempt. So figuring out that, whether did I do justice to my preparation the first time I was preparing, and then I'm doing my journey is not from courseware to SimTest, my journey is from SimTest to courseware. So I'm taking a test and then figuring out what are the gaps. So I'm figuring out that, okay, maybe my parajumble accuracy is not that great. Go back to your material, solve more questions of parajumbles. Or I have messed up a particular set related to, let's say, trains and whatever timetable. I go back and do something similar. Or I, let's say, make mistakes in a lot of time, speed, distance question, go back, solve more questions of that concept, and then come back. So I have to have a preparation plan between the two SimCATs that I'm taking. See, if you just take a SimCAT and then say, okay, fine, this is the score that I got. Now I don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? That should not be the case. So you should have a preparation plan going from one sim test to another. That, okay, these are the things that I'm going to work on. So that's a difference that happens, that my approach changes. It's not going to be that I'm learning something from the very first time, but I've already known the concepts. I'm now working on whether I'm able to apply it in test condition or not. If I'm not able to do that, let me go back to my courseware and then do more questions.
So broadly, you're saying that maybe for a repeat taker, focus will be more on SimCAT taking rather than on learning the concepts.
Right. Because again, as I said, I've gone through that journey, right? So when I look at my first attempt as an aspirant versus my second attempt, and I moved from an 83 percentile in the first attempt to a 98.2 in my second attempt. The biggest difference was the number of questions that I solved and the practice that I had done, right? So because the concepts are the same, right? So when you're preparing for the very first time, successive percentage change is A plus B plus AB by 100. Second time also it is A plus B plus AB by 100. But now you also learn that, okay, there is a faster way maybe that if there is 10% increase, 20% increase, I can do a 1.1 into 1.2 and 1.32, so 32% is what it is. That is the journey that a repeat taker is possibly taking. That you already know something, let me further build on that.
So
I have a question for Prasad. In fact, Prasad, what do you think? How much should students dwell on how should they prepare based on what they saw in Quant and CAT 23? How will their preparation change, or what can they do differently?
So the first thing is to don't be scared of it, right? Because see, if it has happened in one particular, does not mean that it will continue to happen, right? It may or may not set a trend. So we don't know what exactly is going to happen. The core preparation aspect don't change, right? So you have to build the strong foundation that is required. Even for earlier CAT, that was required, right? You have to have your base. Then only you can move on to difficult questions. So the first thing is to have the strong fundamentals that are required. Having done that, of course, because as you mentioned also, right, that now the algebra has also started becoming a more important area. You cannot say that I'm not going to do algebra. So you cannot be a serious CAT aspirant and say that, okay, I don't know how to solve roots of quadratic, or given sum of product of roots, I'm running away from that question. That approach you cannot take. So as you also rightly mentioned, that I will not skip a particular topic, right? Logarithms, for example. And I've seen countless students saying that I'm not going to do logarithms. The moment I see logs, I'm scared of it. But logarithms is nothing but indices, right? So a 2 raised to 3 is equal to 8. Log of 8 to the base 2 is equal to 3. Right? That's the only difference that has happened. There isn't any difference between logarithm and indices. So am I running away from a topic just because of CAT 23, how the questions appeared, or my perception of whatever it is, right? So let me sit and do everything, first of all, the basic concepts, and then let me work on that. So of course, we'll be doing a lot of more difficult questions this year because of what happened in CAT 23. This is something that we decided to do in our master classes as well, because of which we completely revamped the master classes and created new ones from scratch, which are difficult, addressing that change so that nobody is surprised. But now see, now they made it so difficult last year that there isn't going to be any surprise from here. I don't think, at least. So let's be prepared for whatever happened in CAT 23 without forgetting the fact that previous CATs, CAT 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 and all of that, if I've covered everything that has been asked there, I'm prepared for it.
Sure. So I'll just like to summarize for the IMS students here that if you are a repeat taker, maybe you're already well prepared for Quant, your focus preparation can be on the master classes. We have added 40 exercises on the master classes. If you're taking CAT for the first time, still getting comfortable with Quant, we would still suggest you first complete at least one round of preparation for a topic and only then move on to the master classes. So master classes, we have taken it at CAT 23 level. So you should try master classes. As we say, the courseware and the IMS portal will take you from 0 to that 85 percentile mark. The master class will take you from that 85 percentile mark to the 95 percentile mark. So only once I have done the basics should you do the master classes. For repeaters, it can be your focus area of preparation for this particular year. Okay. Kumud ma'am, suppose somebody already scored a 98 or a 95 percentile on CAT 23. Should that student still practice the 2 RCs that we mentioned, or should he still do that 300 RCs, or should he say, okay, fine, let me just solve the RCs only on the proctored SimCATs, for example?
When I don't take tests for, let's say, a month, and after that, if I take a test, my score always falls. The reason that I'm saying this is that let's not take things for granted. Even if you were phenomenal at verbal, even if you are a regular reader, it does not necessarily mean that your brain will kind of drive itself to action immediately on the day of CAT. So what I'm trying to say is it's okay if you don't do the 2 passages every day. But just like Prasad said, it is very important to keep yourself in the test-taking mode. That is something we cannot let go of. And there is one more thing that I wanted to mention with regard to verbal. See, unlike the quant section, which last year was a shock for a lot of people, verbal has remained fairly stable.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that we should not assume it will remain stable.
Okay.
We have seen in the past, if we go, let's say, to 2005, 2006, the difficulty level has varied drastically. Let us also not assume that the composition of questions will remain exactly the same.
Correct.
So, for example, there might be an odd sentence question, there may not be an odd sentence question, which again means that we cannot afford to skip anything. Parajumbles may be painful for you, but that does not mean that you decide, I will never do parajumbles. I mean, we just don't get along, so I will not do it. It's good to practice. We have given you enough parajumbles to solve, and it's definitely not the time to give up right now. So let's not go there with assumptions. Let's look at the entire section before we decide our strategy.
Okay.
And we will talk about strategy in some of our future videos. So I think maybe right now we don't want to go into too many details.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So let me summarize what we discussed for the quant section. We discussed that arithmetic should be the first module that we work on. That should be followed by algebra. Then between geometry and numbers, you can take your pick. And the last module that you can touch is modern math. We repeat that we strongly recommend that you not skip any particular chapter or module, given that we still have quite some time to go to the CAT 24 as of now. And for the repeat takers, from what I hear, if I have to summarize, I would say that focus on working on the areas that you lacked during your previous attempts. So it could be quant, it could be one particular module, or it can be open. So work on that particular module. And for the other things that you are good at, I would call it the maintenance mode. So even if I scored a 99 percentile on verbal, I would still ensure that I take SimCATs regularly, do more test solving rather than doing 2 RCs a day. So work on your areas that you lacked last time and maintain your strength. That's broadly what I would summarize our discussion as of now. Now for our last section, I would say we can talk about SimCAT taking and the general mental preparation required to ensure that we ace the CAT. So now I'll come to SimCAT taking. Prasad, I'll start with you. So a lot of students have this question: when should they start taking the sim test? A lot of them maybe have started the preparation a month ago, a few months ago, and they have not yet in a way completed the syllabus.
Right.
So when would you recommend that they start taking the sim?
So in fact, Amit sir and I have had this discussion earlier. So both of us have slightly different thoughts on it.
Sure.
But where that commonality exists is that we think that students should start taking it as early as possible. Right?
Okay.
So do not wait, do not postpone your SimCATs. The best thing to do is whenever proctored SimCATs happen, you show up. Right? So you take the test.
So what if I have enrolled, let's say yesterday, and tomorrow is the next SimCAT? Would you recommend that I take?
Yeah. So if you're somebody who generally gets scared or demotivated by low scores, then don't do it. But if you are somebody who is taking it to learn and say that, okay, this is my baseline performance, let me just assess it, then fine, go ahead and take it. Don't take that score to your heart and say that, okay, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, right? So I will focus firstly on the things that I've done, right? See, a lot of times students make the mistake of judging themselves and saying that I'm not good at this basis how they have done on the entire SimCAT. But my point is this, that let's say you studied only one module so far. You are taking the SimCAT. For VRC, of course, whatever RC topics that you have done in first module, try and solve any RC that is there, right? But when it comes to quant, let's say you have done only module 1, and out of the questions that are there, only 6 questions appeared from module 1. assess yourself on the basis of those 6 questions. That have I done justice to these 6 questions? Was I able to identify that, okay, these are the questions from module 1? Was I able to, let's say, start those questions and maybe reach 50, 75%, 90% or the entire question? So that is how I'll judge my performance and not on the entire test.
Okay.
See, if I have not done permutation combination at this point of time, I'll not be able to answer the question. It is as simple as that. So then I should not tell myself that I'm not good at quant. So let's not generalize it to that extent and say just because of one bad score, I'm not going to be able to do well on this section. But start taking it as early as possible, because you're also losing out on an opportunity to learn from that. See, if you push that thing to, let's say, August, September and say that I'll finish maybe 2, 3 modules, 4 modules, and then I will take the SimCAT, you are depriving yourself of that opportunity, because every SimCAT is also getting better at test taking itself. That how do I handle the mental aspects of sitting at a particular test, and if things don't go well in the first 10 attempts, how do I react? If things don't go well in the first section, then how do I react in the next 2 sections? So all of that is also a learning experience which you have to have through SimCATs. So that is why start taking it as early as possible. The thing that I was initially talking about was, Amit sir says that you should just take it. Right?
Okay.
So you don't have to wait for your module 1 to get over and then you take the SimCAT. So maybe Amit sir can expand on that.
So my logic is, have a very small target. 40 minutes, say, let's talk about quant first. 40 minutes, I will go and look only at 5 questions and maybe finally attempt only 3. Can I get all 3 right in 40 minutes? Not very difficult. Suddenly when you look at 13 minutes per question, you have all the time to do any traditional method. There will always be those sitters, which also you can do by a long method. So can I just go and identify those 3 or 5 sitters and then say, okay, I took 40 minutes to solve only 5 questions, but I got all of them right. And you'll be surprised, you're still doing better than a lot of other students. Same way, LRDI, one set. Even if you select the most difficult, which you should not normally, because if you just skim through the set, you'll realize this is the most difficult one. So if you select one of them and say, okay, I will take a lot of time, but I will solve only one set today, it is okay. That whole confidence of taking a test really, really helps you. And once you start taking more and more tests, and also when you will take the test, you will start analyzing it. See, for me, taking the test is one part, analyzing it is the second part. Why did I attempt such questions? How did the person who made the video solutions for that, how did he solve it versus how did I solve it becomes very, very important to me. So I have a simple logic. You will have roughly, including the take homes, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 40 SimCATs.
Correct.
40 SimCATs, even if I count 22 questions per SimCAT in quant, there are 880 good quality questions with video solutions available to you. If by the time you reach November, whatever date the CAT is, and if you have not looked at half of them, you have wasted golden resources and you've not used them. So I'm saying that you had resources and you did not use them. So for me, yes, maybe not for somebody like, as Hemang said, somebody who's enrolled yesterday and taking a SimCAT today, maybe not. But if you're 15 days, 20 days into your preparation and you've started your preparation, take it. Don't worry too much.
Correct. So I think what I gather from Amit sir's conversation here is he wants you to start taking a test as soon as possible. So maybe the proctored SimCAT may not be the first right initiation, especially if you take your score to heart, at Prasad said. So maybe you can look at what we have developed is the pre-SimCATs. By nature, they are a little easier, help you to just focus on module 1 and 2. Or maybe you can also start with a take-home SimCAT without the pressure of being judged by your percentile. So yes, you should start taking test as early as possible. But maybe the SimCAT, the proctored SimCAT, may not be the first SimCAT that you actually take. So Govindam, I wanted to ask you this. On one hand, we've said that don't take your score to heart, but we also, as mentors, and I think everybody also focuses on the percentile. So maybe the first question we ask students when we meet is, what is your SimCAT percentile? So how does the student manage this duality? On one hand, we are saying that okay, SimCAT reflects your performance, or at least your current performance, And we're also saying that if you don't do well, okay, don't worry too much about it. I know it's a duality. It's a very tricky slope for you to answer, but if you want to take a shot at it, accept.
Well, I do want to get deeply philosophical about this duality, but I'm going to try and stay away from that. So, first of all, the SimCAT is not a measure of your potential performance all the time. The SimCAT is a measure of your performance as on date. Right? So, whenever we start taking the SimCATs, we have to look at it as a temporary measure of where we are today. That is one. But for VARC particularly, one of the things that happens is that students tell me that in VARC I don't do well. But the issue is that we don't know whether it is because they are not good at VARC or because it is the first section and they are slightly stressed. So for both those reasons, the SimCATs are supposed to be helpful, because if you are in the habit of taking a test every week, for example, and maybe later on every alternate day, then on the day of the CAT, it might just seem as if it's just another SimCAT. Okay. So it gets you into that mindset where you do not get stressed about taking a test. Secondly, whenever you take a test, you also have to look at all the things that are happening in your own mind. I know that this introspection may not happen while you're taking the test, but it could happen later. So for VARC, let's say that I attempted 3 passages and I got most of the questions right. What does that tell me? That tells me that, okay, I might be very good at verbal. Does it tell me that on the day of CAT, I will do really great at verbal? Not necessarily. So that means that I have to continue taking SimCATs, look at the trend for about 5 tests before deciding what are my true strengths or weaknesses. The other thing that you also need to look at is if there are problem areas. Is it at the level of reading? So there are 3 skills, right? There is reading, there's comprehension, and then there is option elimination. So when I say there's a problem with reading, this is a problem that will affect all 3 sections. If your reading speed is slow, then how will you read so many questions in the first place? So then I know that I have to read a lot to make up for that area. Second, if my problem is comprehension, is it with relation to a particular area? I don't like history. So anytime historical passages show up, I just don't get it. In which case, the solution is to obviously read more historical passages instead of saying, oh, I will not do it. The third is option elimination. I have done everything. I'm comfortable with all areas, but somehow I get the questions wrong. So when you look at the time that you have spent on each question, you might realize that you've spent 8 minutes reading the passage and 30 seconds on the question itself. So all of these insights will not come unless they take the test. And this is why we want you to take it. It is not for you to say, oh, I'm bad at VARC, nothing will happen. Oh, I'm good at VARC, so I don't need to work. Correct. So both of these attitudes are not great.
Correct. From what Prasad said, I think what a SimCAT does is to test you on 3 levels. Test of content. Do you know this particular quant question, which you can obviously improve. Second is a test of your, your stamina, because for a lot of students, sitting for 2 hours and taking a test itself is a challenge. So to overcome that challenge, the only way to do it is to take more 2-hour tests. So that's, I think, a very underrated use of SimCATs. And third is it helps you develop your strategy, right? So it's a test of your strategy. So how do you, come back after a poor verbal section? How do you come back after a poor DILR set selection? All those things will come to you with experience, and that is why we tell students, to take more and more SimCATs.
On the stamina point, I had one point to add. Maybe not today, maybe it's a little bit early today, but a lot of students tell me that, sir, after the first 2 sections, when it comes to the quant section, I'm too tired, I'm mentally tired. Correct. So I think we both have also discussed this many times, is that always have a 4th section ready. So if you're preparing for a 2-hour test,
correct, yeah,
at home or when you're taking your SimCATs, prepare for 2 hours, 40 minutes. That means 1 SimCAT plus 1 section test. So you should tell yourself, as soon as the SimCAT will get over, my timer for the section test starts. And that section test can be different every time. So that, it's kind of, the average is also working out that you're practicing equal areas. Correct. Equally all the 3 areas. So hence, if you do that 4 section practice, I think that stamina will really build well. Prasad, who runs a lot, will tell you that when you need to run, you will always practice a little bit more than what you actually want to run on the day of the marathon or whatever. Makes sense. So all exactly the same logic I'm applying here, and hence doing 4 sections, maybe not today, maybe 3 months, like 3 months away from CAT, you can start doing this. It will really help you.
Makes sense. Now, coming to a question, and again, I'm sure there are going to be different parts of the audience having different questions here. One is, how many hours a day should I devote to CAT preparation? Is again, the answers can be subjective. I'm sure the audience is mature enough to realize that. But is there some benchmark that we can use that, based on our experience, X number of hours is a good number?
So obviously, more the merrier.
Okay.
But my whole idea is that number is different for different people. Depending on what stage of your preparation are you in, what did you do over the last 1 year? So suppose somebody who started 1.5 years back and has been studying consistently can keep doing that same pace, say 2 hours, 1.5 hours, 2 hours every day, and he will do well. But somebody who just started last month has decided that I'm going to maybe do a sprint kind of thing at the end, and
Correct.
so I'm doing it that way. So my whole idea is it will also depend on what stage of life you are in. So if you are a working professional, you'll have to cut corners and find time from everywhere. While if you're a student who has just finished his graduation, not even taken up a job, maybe doing a small internship or something, we'll have a lot more time on hand. So I think from a 6-month perspective, I would look at it as, means if you really have to give a number, I think an average of around 25 to 30 hours a week.
Okay.
I think that's a good number for an average. Why am I giving an average? Because working professionals will have more time on the weekends.
Correct.
So they can kind of take it that way. Yeah, but please don't take it that way that you'll study only on the weekends. Spend some time at least, either early morning, late evening, on studying every day.
One of you or both of you want to weigh into this particular question?
Yes, I think I would like to comment on this bit. What I wanted to stress was that this exam is unlike a lot of the other exams that we take in school and particularly college. Now, let me mention college first. So for a lot of students, college exams are something that they need to study for 2 weeks for, or 1 week, sometimes even overnight. It's not going to work here. So let's have that very clear. So if you want to do a marathon sprint at the end, let's make sure that it is not in the last 1 month, because that may not necessarily have the same results as if you put in that performance earlier. So if you want to do that marathon sprint, let's try and push it back a little bit. Now, if we want to comment on time per week, I think the best way to tackle that in terms of personal satisfaction would be to ask yourself, have I done the best that I could with the available time that I have?
Makes sense.
Right. So, for example, what if I'm really busy and my job is so taxing that I barely have time to sleep and eat, which could happen for a lot of people. So, can I take out 1 hour a day, and in that 1 hour, what is it that I can accomplish? So, that is one way to look at it. Now, maybe I work 6 days a week and Sunday is the only day I have off. For a normal individual, I may not think that it is fair to say Sunday you study for 15 hours, because come on, you need to have a life. But Sunday, can I put in 6 to 7 hours maybe? Yes. If not 6 to 7, 4 to 5. So again, just ask yourself, what is the best I can do, and try to reach that.
Perfect. Yeah, I want to add something, rather 2 things. One is so there is this article by HBR called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. Right? See, everybody keeps asking, how do I manage my time and all of that. But a lot of it is also related to how are you managing your energy, right? So your sleep, your nutrition, they also make a lot of difference to an aspirant's life. A lot of times while you're in engineering or you're doing your college exams, we have that habit that we'll study overnight and then go and deliver on the next day. That is firstly not going to work for CAT. It's a big preparation journey. You have to manage your energy throughout this entire period. So take care of your nutrition, your sleep. Those 2 are very important aspects. The second aspect that I want to talk about is going to be the matter of priority. Right? So one of the productivity experts called Laura Vanderkam has a TED talk, and she keeps saying this, that everything boils down to how important something is. So see, I may have a lot of things to do today, right? I may have, let's say, CAT preparation, I may have my work, I may have some plan to go out with my friends for a movie. What is priority for me today? That is something that I have to decide. See, pretty much all the CAT aspirants will, if you look at now till the CAT day, you have the end goal in mind that CAT is going to happen in November last Sunday. All of you have that time available, but not everybody will have the same amount of time available. And also with the same amount of time, no 2 people will use it appropriately, right? Or in the most productive manner. So ultimately, it is going to come down to the matter of priority. That on a Sunday, what is your priority? Is it CAT preparation or is it going to the beach? Right? I'm not saying don't go to the beach. I'm saying enjoy your life, because that your mindset is also important in this entire journey. But then you can decide that, okay, today I'm not going to watch Netflix for 2 hours, because that is not the best use of my time.
Makes sense.
So I think what Prasad is just saying is that, is CAT your priority?
Yeah.
If you decide to make CAT your priority, I think you will start doing well. That's the whole idea, I think.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And see, there's this one question that again, maybe we'll take it as a last question, that somewhere there's a feeling of fear, that, if I start today, can I still make it? Can I still, ace the test? So what's your opinion, given that we are like 5 months, 6 months away from CAT, if somebody starts today, can he still make it?
Definitely. Means every year we've seen people doing it. Means you have thousands of examples of people who start, say, in June, July, and still make it to the top IIMs also. Obviously, as I said, you'll have to make CAT your priority. You cannot start at this moment and say, I also have a life, I also have to go to the gym. I mean, I'm not saying don't go to the gym, there's nothing wrong against that. But how much time are you spending there? All those things will start really matter. It will really matter to those things. So have CAT as your priority. Take it very, very seriously. I think you have the perfect amount of time now, It's not the perfect, but I would say just about the time you have now. It's not that you cannot make it. You have the right resources, start using them well. I think you'll do it.
Sure. Anything you'd like to add, Prasad?
Yeah, regarding, I think, the time question only that you asked, right? That is this time sufficient for me? See, somebody can start preparation in June, July, August also, and then crack the CAT. Everybody will need different amount of time, and how much of that is usable, that is also the question, right? So if somebody is, let's say, not doing anything, right, just preparing for the CAT, 3 months may be sufficient for that person. We never know. The other thing is, everybody sits at a different level in the aptitude hierarchy, right? So if you look at the pyramid of aptitude, some people could be already sitting at the apex, right? Maybe there could be somebody who has cracked IIT JEE left, right, center, or let's say did extremely well in NEET or whatever, right? There could be people like that, but there could be people who are sitting at whatever, the starting or the bottom of the pyramid at this point of time. The point is, I need to figure out how can I move upwards in the limited time that is available. Correct. So I look at it as a constraint optimization problem, that you have some constraints, that I am working or I am a whatever, right? I am somebody who has just graduated.
Correct.
Within the constraints, am I optimizing with whatever resources that I have? And that is why I'm again running after a lot of resources also, that you first do the things that are given to you. So a lot of times students come to us and ask, should I do this material from outside? My question is, have you done the IMS material?
Correct.
So within the constraints, with the resources that you have, optimize your preparation and you'll have a far better outcome. So don't ask yourself, is the time sufficient? Ask yourself, how am I going to use the time that is available?
Makes sense. I think we have answered most of the questions that the students would have at this point of time. I hope if you watch this entire video, this last 1 hour or so was helpful, and it would help you optimize, the time you're going to spend in your CAT preparation. We had a blast having a discussion. It's always great to discuss with friends and colleagues here. I hope you also did enjoy the video, and keep watching the videos that we post on. We'll get a little more, frequent on our channel, because this is the right time, for you to focus on your CAT preparation. So all the best from all of us. We'll see each other more often now, and keep your focus on CAT. Thank you.